Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today our guest is Matthew Ryan. Thanks for being on the show, Matthew.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, Matt's experience spans 10 years as an entrepreneur, launching his first company out of the recession in 2009 to capitalize on the growing opportunities in energy-efficient and green building within the construction sector, pivoting to real estate after making his first investment project in 2013. Matt has compiled a 30% IRR on all investment projects since while building a personal portfolio worth over $2 million, handling all facets of the transaction, the broker, property management, general contractor, all while positioning re-viv to become the market leader in community revitalization efforts. So, Matt, thanks again for just being on the show and providing your experience and expertise. I'm looking forward to this. And, give the listeners just a little more about possibly your background and what your focus is right now.
Yeah, so, reiterating construction, energy efficiency and green building was an exciting part of my career. Being trained in this field of building science, which was very much how, comfort, air quality, energy efficiency, durability of structures it was a great experience and what I enjoyed in contracting. And obviously I saw an opportunity to take that knowledge and expertise and parlay it into real estate investing. And right now, Revive is focused on an opportunity zone fund that we formulated. We're looking to capitalize on the momentum in co-living projects in the multifamily sector. So we are focused in the East Bay market in Oakland, as well as parts of San Jose. And we're rounding out our capital raise right now, getting ready to place the capital that we raised in the first quarter and looking to raise some more in the second quarter.
So let's go into that a little bit. You said you're focused on the Opportunity Zone Fund. Is that right? Yeah.
So Opportunity Zones, Qualified Opportunity Zones, a lot of different names for it, but it was under the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. It was a provision in the tax code that's created, a pretty substantial tax deferral strategy, very similar to 1031 exchange.
Okay, and so. I guess give us some benefits of, maybe why we should be looking into opportunity zones and why that's important. And then let's, we'll go into some more details of kind of the process that you're going through right now.
Yeah, of course. So specifically investors who have a large capital gain, right? And it happens all the time in real estate. You've got a large paper, equity that you're sitting on, substantial profit that you're sitting on. What do? Right? Like you see the questions on Bigger Pockets. Everyone's who's been in real estate hopefully gets to that point. But 1031 exchange, have you completed one before?
No, I have not.
No? Okay, so it's really kind of tough. You have 45 days to identify 3 assets, right? And you have to close on one of those 3 in 180 days, right? With opportunity zones, you've got a little bit more flexibility. You got 180 days to place your money, that capital gain, into a qualified opportunity fund. Okay. The qualified opportunity fund then has to go out, purchase the asset and make substantial improvements. There's a substantial improvement clause in there within 30 months. And so the way that the substantial improvement clause works, you buy a property for $1 million and you assign $600,000 to the land, $600,000 to the building, full $400,000 to the land. You need to improve that building by $600,000. Once you do that, you defer your original capital gain up until the year 2026. And there's what they call a step down basis. So it can get a little technical at this point. I'll do it very quickly. Let's say you had a $100,000 gain that you deferred into an investment. In 2026, you would pay only 85% of the original tax that you would be obligated to had you not rolled it into a qualified opportunity fund. Okay.
You would only pay how much?
You'd pay 15% less of your original tax liability. Okay. So your $100,000 investment, let's just say you owe $28,000 on that. Your tax liability you'd only be taxed on $85,000 as opposed to $100,000. Okay. And the other benefit is really at the exit, because if you keep the investment in the opportunity zone investment or fund for 10 years, you pay zero capital gains at exit. So it's not like a 1031 where you have to keep rolling over, right? Like you're still kind of, trying to avoid that gain with a 1031, and eventually, the government's going to get, they're going to get their money. The benefit is once you leave after the 10-year period, an opportunity as an investment, you pay zero capital gains on that new appreciation. So it is a deferral as well as a tax, zero tax on the gain of the new investment. So it's got a little bit more flexibility, obviously a better tax benefit than 1031. But, it does come with risks. So these census tracts are, they've been designated as distressed areas. But I think if you Google opportunity zones and you look at some of those in your state, some of these are in areas that, are already prominent up and coming areas.
So how do we find an opportunity zone, or how do we know that that's something we should be pursuing, or is it something everybody should be pursuing?
Yeah, for one, the substantial improvement clause it's gonna take a lot of your value add guys out, right? So I know a lot of syndicators are focused on value add. You got to hit that substantial improvement. So you're looking at very heavy capital infusion projects or ground up development. So that's those are kind of the two key things to understand.
When you say the value add guys, like you mean like if we're looking to come in and put say $5,000 a unit in to do a value add, that's not going to be near enough. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you're going to have a really tough time, hitting that $600,000 on that $1 million project, right?
Yes.
You're going to have to spend a lot of money per door. So yeah, it really kind of takes it out. They're really looking, the intent of the program was job creation. So, development projects typically, they're going to yield more jobs. And so that's kind of that is the intent. And that's why they had the substantial improvement clause. So the development plays are going to make the most sense. Again, heavy gut rehabs, those are the ones that, or maybe you've got a multifamily project that you've got a portion that you can develop, you've got some vacant land. Those also work well. So it is a little restrictive as far as the type of investments you can make. But yeah, and as far as getting involved, just Google opportunity zones, your state. Pretty much every state now has their own mapping tool. So you can take an address and look to see if it's an opportunity zone.
Nice. And so then we can focus on that area and try to find distressed properties or vacant land, something in that area.
Yep. That's a very common. And I know a lot of people use various tools, CoStar, Prospect Now. I know CoStar has an overlap tool for opportunity zones, map overlay. I mean, there's been at least 2 or 3 new software launches that I've seen in the marketplace, people coming in with these tools. I still say find the free one. Go to Google, go to your state, website, and you more likely be able to find something for sure.
Okay, so somebody, and I can see why. You've mentioned you have a strong construction background, and I can see why that would be very useful. Looking for obviously highly distressed properties, and so is that looking for opportunity zones and those types of highly distressed properties? Is that what you started with? Is that the type of properties you knew you were going to do right from the beginning?
It is, and it's what I enjoy the most. I mean, I like taking something that has good bones, and it's just. Even throughout kind of my hobbies, I've found myself really enjoying taking old stuff, reconstructing it, building it back together. And so for me, and then it parlays into kind of our investment thesis, which from a broader perspective is community revitalization projects, which, these heavy value add, these projects are already challenging enough. Like we had to take it a step further and find something equally challenging as community revitalization, which is, it's a difficult process, right? You've got a disaggregation between the investors, the community members, the public entities that are trying to bring these communities up, while also balancing, old style community members who maybe have been there for years, experienced the blight, the lack of opportunity within their neighborhoods, and all of a sudden free market comes knocking on their door, right? So it's, it very much plays into like I said, our thesis and what we're trying to do. And as far as providing the tools, the resources, the intellectual capital to make this process more efficient, because we really feel like the public sector is really failing to address it.
So you mentioned earlier just about risks, about, pursuing opportunity zones. And I'd like for us to go through a few of those, or a little more in detail.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
it's like
maybe some common ones that, that we wouldn't normally think of, that's specific, obviously to opportunity zones.
Yeah. It's difficult to find something different, right, Whitney? Because um, every investor needs to be very careful about where they're investing, right? You never, it's the age old thing, like you don't want to find yourself too on the fringe, you don't want to invest in the war zones. And I think you really have to look at, and we do that internally, it's like, where is this community set up for success, or is this just a high cash flowing opportunity, right? Like you can't get starry-eyed with the numbers and the cash flows. You got to look at the community, and we look for that too. We're like, we look at, is there transit stops, or plans for transit infrastructure, is there, we look at the growth and income growth, how, growth in household income, an influx of a younger demographic or an older demographic too. Seniors are also kind of flocking to urban cores, right? We've known that, these suburban arteries, to kind of steal a term from John Burns. You got to do your market research on this, and you have to be diligent. And of course, you got to drive the neighborhoods, all the age-old stuff that everyone talks about. For us, we look at it very much as a statistical analysis first, and then it's very much a feel. And you got to look at your local governments too. Are they engaged? Are they on board? Are they just posting this stuff up on their website and saying, hey, like, we hope we get some opportunity? There's been state and local governments, and even states, that are beginning to build incentives on top of the opportunity zone tax deferral strategy. So I think when you see a level of engagement at that level, that's when we really start to become interested, because the public players have to be on board too, and they have to want to see the growth. And I think if they're on your side and you can, they can be a part of your story, that's going to help. Because I know here in California, oftentimes developers aren't always looked at in the most trustworthy lens. We're kind of looked at the enemy as the guys that are gentrifying these communities, taking people out of their communities and pushing people out. And, we kind of get a bad rap.
Wow. So, I appreciate you mentioning too, like looking at the infrastructure of the city, is there room to grow? Are they growing? Things like that before looking at the cash flow. It's so important. But, as far as, thinking about an opportunity zone, if I'm going to pursue an opportunity zone, what are some things that could possibly go wrong? I was thinking about the, what was the substantial improvement clause? What are the chances that, okay, we're going to build this addition, or we're going to turn this property around in just a major way, but then, it can't happen. What's going to happen? We got to put the 600,000 in it, but we only got to 500, and for whatever happened, that's all, we can do. Are you tired of answering emails from investors about when they'll receive their K-1s? Let the Real Estate CPA handle the accounting and taxes on your next syndication, and they'll file your tax returns by March 15th, so you can get your K-1s to your investors by the individual filing deadline on April 15th. Not only will this reduce headaches, but it will help you retain investors over the long term by improving investor experience. The Real Estate CPA is now offering a special virtual workshop to the listeners of the Real Estate Syndication Show on how to answer tax-related questions from your investors. Learn more today by visiting therealestatecpa.com/syndication.
Yeah, and I think that is an inherent risk, right? Is you're playing by the government's rules, and you have to be very careful. So I think the first thing that you really need to do to mitigate that risk is you need to have a qualified professional, an accountant, CPA, as well as a securities attorney who knows what they're doing. I've seen it. I just saw it on Bigger Pockets today, right? Like, people are like, I've got this great deal in opportunity zones. Now what do I do? Oh man. Those are the people that are going to really start to hurt a little bit, because it's a web of details. And to be honest, we started tracking this piece of legislation 2 years ago before it even got passed. I've interviewed, multiple securities attorneys, and, just conferences galore. I mean, almost burnt out on this, right? I'm still learning new stuff every day. You know, there's still always someone brings a point to me and I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that. So the compliance piece is going to have to be integral to your strategy. You really have to know the ins and outs. And I don't want to scare anyone. I mean, I think for an individual person trying to make an investment, just one individual, you know, it's fairly simple. There's an 8996 or 8896 form that you have to fill out through the IRS. But, you know, having a good qualified, like I said, attorney, securities attorney, or an attorney who knows this stuff, if you're syndicating, obviously, securities, and a CPA is going to help you with the compliance. I think that's the best way to kind of mitigate some of your downside risk. And then as far as, yeah, I mean, you made a good point. Substantial improvement clause. There's some hurdles to clear. I think you got to be very, very diligent on understanding, like, what are my traps, what are my pitfalls, and, you know, hey, at the end of the day, if you make a good investment, you know, and it doesn't work out, say you miss that substantial improvement, you're going to pay taxes on it, you know, and that sucks. But if you made a good investment, you know, it's not a horrible thing. And I think that was kind of the message we saw at a lot of the conferences. Everyone saying, hey, opportunity zones are going to make deals look better, right? They're going to help. They're going to add a sweetener to an already good deal. And I think you got to look at it through that mentality.
So what would you say is different about your team since you're pursuing opportunity zones as opposed to somebody that's pursuing, you know, value add multifamily?
Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate that, because I do think we've carved out a good niche, obviously. For us, we're not doing it as a full open-ended fund. So this isn't a pooled fund. We'll be focused on one specific asset. Each deal will be underwritten as an individual opportunity zone fund. And I know that may be confusing to some, but it kind of allows investors to have a little bit more control and not be pooled into these multi-asset funds where there's a lot of perceived risk, especially from a regulatory, because if the IRS or the Treasury changes their mind on some things, that's going to throw people into a tizzy. And there's still been a lot of regulation, you know, high-level questions that haven't been addressed. And I know a lot of larger fund managers have kind of been dragging their feet waiting. So we feel like, because we're small enough, it's only about a $10 million raise, and the assets that we're focused on are smaller. These are multifamily, small, you know, 2,000, 3,000 square foot, single family, under 4 unit vacant properties that we'll be going in and retrofitting in and bringing in a co-living model. We feel like it's kind of small enough that's capitalizing on a great uptrend in co-living, you know, in high density urban areas. And again, it's like these projects already make sense. The opportunity zone just makes it a little bit sweeter for us. And it plays into our investment thesis, you know, innovative approaches to affordable housing. We think co-living is one of those. And community revitalization. You know, the areas that we're investing in are still revitalizing corridors in around the Oakland, Berkeley, San Jose markets. And so it's, you know, it's a great fit for us. But yeah, I think size and lack of complexity, those are kind of the two things. And the ability for a larger investor to come in with us and, you know, maybe be standing aside from 1, 2, 3, 5 other investors, as opposed to a large, you know, open-ended or even closed-ended multi-asset fund.
So you mentioned co-living model. Go into that a little bit. What is that? What does that look like for listeners that's never heard that term before?
Yeah, so co-living is capitalizing on this trend of, you know, these major urban markets that people are getting priced out of, right? So, for instance, in Oakland, San Francisco, you know, it's $3,500 for a studio in San Francisco, right? Oakland, I think, is around $2,200 to $2,400, depending on which market you want to be in. Then you got to furnish it, right? A lot of people do what I did when I moved to San Francisco. I spent about 90 days trying to find an apartment. And once I found a 2-bedroom, because that brought my price point down a little bit from a studio, I had to find a roommate, right? And then you got to go through the awkwardness of furnishing it and sharing the responsibilities. And, you know, it's to be honest, it's a dream. I mean, it's, and I know that can't speak for everyone else, but I know in a lot of the primary markets that are real job growth engines right now, like the Bay Area, it's becoming increasingly more challenging. And so the thing that co-living does is, for one, you know, our rents are anywhere between 20 to 30% below the market rate of a studio. It's turnkey. It's a furnished unit that you walk into. You know, you don't have to worry about that. Your cleaning is taken care of. You know, there's certain amenities that are being brought to the facility One of the co-living projects that our property manager, Open Door, has, they have a tea room in the bottom, co-living in the ground floor. There's a lot of these people are freelancers, nonprofit workers, so they need office space. So it adds 2 layers, right, to that. The second piece is there's a growing kind of community level. Ben Proven of Open Door told me, he's like, we had our first co-living baby. The couple had a kid, and they were living in a co-living complex, saving money to be able to buy a house. People have changed jobs because of the network opportunities it's presented. And I think he's done a really great job of trying to build a culture in the communities and not so much just trying to scale. And I think that's really crucial to make the model work. So, there's a lot of those. They're the kind of things that have really, I think, are going to help it build, aside from just being an affordable, much more turnkey on-demand solution, which I think the demographic that's choosing co-living is that's what we want, right? That's what people want in that demographic. In addition to, there was a great article in San Francisco Chronicle. The title was, "It's Great Coming Home to People." There's, multiple roommates, which I know that can be leery for some. I know for me, it kind of freaked me out a little bit, if you're a private person, but I think, for some, it's just kind of nice coming home to a crowd of people, a community, so to speak.
Interesting. So what do you tell somebody that says, Matt, I'm thinking I should also pursue opportunity zones. What do they need to know, or to really determine, okay, is this something I should really spend my time on?
Yeah. Find an attorney who's familiar with opportunity zones for sure. CPA as well, or ask them about it. I would hook into someone, I'm always happy to be a resource, especially, for people who are in my particular markets, because I think the more momentum we can get into these markets, the better. So find a resource, someone else who's maybe doing something, because you can spend a lot of brain drain just, sitting there reading through the legislation, trying to understand it, and I think you really need to get the finer points, and you need to get back to focusing on what makes us money, right? Which is finding the deals, closing on the deals, and all the necessary pieces that come with that. So I think it's about finding the right team of people, and like I said, maybe partner with a couple people who are a little bit further along than you, who can kind of help fill in the gaps for you without this massive undertaking of understanding what opportunity zones are.
And what is your buying criteria now? So if you're talking to a broker or whoever, what is it you're looking for?
Yeah, so 1,500 to I think 3,000 square feet, primarily vacant, single family, in need of substantial rehab. We carved out. We pulled some assets through a couple of prospecting tools, and we did this cool little calculation on lot size, because we're looking to double square footage. So we I think it was a certain lot size relative to the existing square footage. So it has to have at least, I think, double that, so we can extend the floor, the model with setbacks. We have a 15-foot setback, I think, in Oakland. So anyways, without all those complexities, that's pretty much the basics. And then from there, just like I said, something vacant in need of heavy rehab, which, to be honest, in some of these areas of Oakland, there's really not a shortage of those type of buildings.
And what would you say is the hardest part of, pursuing an opportunity zone or making it happen?
Yeah. That's a good question. I haven't, you would have had to ask me that probably 12 months ago, because it all seems so, easy now, right? It was really understanding the regulation, and kind of getting through the web of, oh my God, like what all do I have to do? And at the end of the day, I think it looks simpler, and it probably is still I'm probably oversimplifying it, but it feels much more easy. It's a purebred real estate play. It's like anything else. You got to have the right team. You got to be able to do your research. But that's, I don't know if that answered your question there.
That's good. What's a way that we can improve our business, that maybe some way you've recently improved yours?
Yeah. I got asked this on another podcast. In my specialization, I heard it over and over again when I first started listening to real estate podcasts, business podcasts. You read it off in my bio, right? I've done like property management, broker, general contractor. It's great that I've done all those things and gotten experience with them. The truth of the matter is I'd probably be 5 times more successful had I really just stayed in my lane. I picked one piece of the puzzle and really done it well. And I think the most successful syndicators out there, the most successful guys have done that very well. I just, I'm a nerd. I love learning to a detriment, right? So I kind of like to get in there and really get into the trenches and do it all and see it all and touch it and feel it. And I think in our business, especially as you begin to syndicate, that's a dangerous proposition because time is your enemy. Resources are, not plentiful, right? And you have to do a lot, and you have to do a lot very well, or you're not, you're going to make a mistake. And I think that was really the biggest thing for me is kind of understanding what do you bring to the table? What do you specialize in, and sticking to that. The second piece I would add was, very much getting the capital teed up and lined up, making sure you got your capital there before you really start going out pursuing deals.
And what's the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Ooh, that's a tough one. It hasn't been one thing. If I had to say anything, I very much made a decision a long time ago to kind of focus on my time management skills in my daily routine. And I'd say if I had to go back and put my finger on one thing, my commitment to what I say yes, what I say no to, the simple, small things that you do to plan for the next day, to be prepared for the week, the quarter, right? And that's probably been the single best, ROI of anything that I've ever done. Because execution is everything. And in any syndication business, you're going to come from this very infancy level stage where you're going to have to do it all, right? Or even if you get a couple partners, you're still going to be strapped. You're still going to have to be very, very diligent about how you spend your time, what you spend your time on. And I think that's a thing that a lot of people struggle with, and for all the right reasons, because there's more distractions than ever, right? And I think really whittling it down and being, I call it the blocking and tackling. I think that's been the key piece for me.
Yeah, it goes back to kind of like we were talking about, focusing on one thing and being really good at that one thing, and instead of trying to be half good or at many things.
The jack of all trades, master of none, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, how do you like to give back?
Yeah. So Revive's mission is kind of based on the social impact model. So we take 1% of all of the asset management's profits pre-tax, and we'll be donating that back into local nonprofits, within the communities that we invest. So that's kind of the key piece that we'll be focusing on as we grow and scale our business. And then the other kind of piece of that is Revive's thought leadership platform, best practices in community revitalization, public policy, which we've just, again, barely hit the tip of the iceberg, barely really been able to realize it, but I'm fascinated by this concept because the truth of the matter is we're doing not a very poor job, but we're doing kind of a poor job right now at it, right? These issues of gentrification, affordability, dwindling workforce housing, and transit-oriented workforce housing, these are complex problems that we're not doing a good job of addressing. And they're just kind of, everyone's talking about them, but it's like, well, where are the solutions, right? And so that's the other piece that I think Revive would really like to address and move towards, and I think for me, the only way to really do that is in the private sector, and that's just kind of been my experience, is where I've really nestled into and what I enjoy. And it has to be done with public policy as well. So that's where we're really trying to grow and give back, kind of looking at that large socioeconomic problem as well as just a direct monetary contribution to the communities. And to me, it kind of creates that ecosystem. It creates that trust that I think is lacking within our business between developers, investors, and the community members.
Awesome. And Matt, tell the listeners how they can learn more about you and get in touch with you. Yeah,
you can, matt.ryan@revive, re-viv.com. I'm usually pretty responsive through email. We're getting more and more involved in our social media, LinkedIn. I think we're posting more and more. We're just launch a new website and blog, so we'll be pushing some more content on there. But I'm still a little old school for being a young cat. Shoot me an email, hit me up, ask me a question. I'll typically respond that way. It's usually the best way.
Awesome. Thanks again, Matt, for being on the show. I really appreciate just your sharing your expertise in opportunity zones. Not many guests, we've had a few, but not many that are just pursuing opportunity zones and know it in depth like you do, and share the pros and cons and risks and many things we need to know about it. And, appreciate the listeners being with us today. I hope you all will go to LifeBridge Capital and also connect with me and go to our Facebook group, the Real Estate Syndication Show. And I hope you're sharing the show. I hope you're sharing it on your network, and we would really appreciate that. And we will talk to each of you tomorrow.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Whitney.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.